Hey guys, I'm Redeemed Zoomer. So today I'm going to be doing kind of a fun video because last video was kind of depressing. I'm going to be giving my personal opinion on every state. Now, if you're easily offended, then watch something else because this is going to be my pure, unfiltered, biased opinion on every state, and probably most of my reasons are going to be kind of silly and based on things that most people don't care about. So let's get started. I'm going to start with my home state, my state of origin, New York. Now, New York is objectively the best state. It has the smartest people, according to New Yorkers, and we're right because we're the smartest. So we're the smartest people. And New York has a few things going for it. Number one, we have the best pizza. If you have like Chicago pizza, that's not pizza. That's like tomato sauce casserole. And we have the best bagels. The Italians make the good pizza, and the Jews make the good bagels. My ancestry is both Italian and Jewish, so I'm the quintessential New Yorker in terms of ethnicity. So if there's pizza from anywhere that's not New York, it's not real pizza, and I'm not going to eat it. You might as well eat cardboard with tomato sauce on it. So New York, I'll say it gets an A, not an S, because as good as it is, there's kind of a reason I left. Because the church options in New York are not the best. The New York City area has a lot of good RCA Reform churches. The PCUSA churches in New York are extremely liberal. Now, the PCUSA, the Presbyterian Church USA mainline denomination, it's not liberal all over the country, as you're about to see. But in New York, it kind of is. So the church options really aren't the best in New York. I didn't leave because of the church options. I left for various reasons. The main reason is because I'm going to school, going to university in Texas. That's the main reason. But I don't see myself going back to New York anytime soon after that. But then maybe that's retreatism. Then maybe I'm being a hypocrite. Anyway, moving on before I get called out too much. Next up is New Jersey, and I am actually going to give this S tier. My dad's family's from New Jersey. I think New Jersey is the most underrated state. A lot of people say they hate New Jersey. I don't get why. New Jersey has, like, a lot of the good things about New York, and New Jersey has, like, some, really cool beaches. I always went to, like, the beaches in New Jersey on vacation as a kid. New Jersey is a really fun state. And for some reason, it's always just fun going to New Jersey. I don't know why. Maybe I'm just stupid. And I'm just saying I like New Jersey, and I don't really explain why. But New Jersey is a fun state. Next up, we have Connecticut. And Connecticut is the boringest state in the whole country. There's not a single state that is more boring than Connecticut. So this gets D tier. Some people say that Connecticut has good schools. That's because there's nothing else to do, right? One cool thing about Connecticut is that it does have some interesting Puritan history, and of course the Puritans were based. But if you want Puritan history, there's other places you could go to. You go to, like, Massachusetts. Connecticut is like New England light. It's like a mixture of New York and Massachusetts. It's like New England without any of the interesting parts, basically. So next up, let's talk about Massachusetts. And I think I'll be giving Massachusetts a B tier because on the one hand, they do have very smart people. They have Harvard. They have Harvard, which was founded by Puritan Calvinists, which is very based. Massachusetts used to be a Calvinist theocracy, and if any of you guys are ever going to run for governor of Massachusetts, please make it a Puritan Calvinist theocracy again. We need to do that. The Puritans never did anything wrong there. I'm kidding. But Massachusetts used to be very based, but now they have the most obnoxious sports fans. The Red Sox fans are the most annoying. The Yankees are the best. So it's like, New Yorkers, we respect Massachusetts in that they are elitist snobs just like we are, but we don't respect their sports fans. So we have kind of like mixed feelings about Massachusetts. I guess I'll give Rhode Island a B. Rhode Island is the only state in New England that I haven't been to. It's just like some boats in the ocean. Yeah, I don't know. I don't know what's there, really. Next up is Vermont, and I don't know what to give Vermont is... I think Vermont wins the medal of the weirdest state in the Union. Vermont is a place where you'll have, get this, progressive rural rednecks. There was an SNL skit that I think was actually kind of funny. The SNL skit depicted like Southern Confederates realizing that Vermont is everything they want because Vermont is like a super old timey place where everyone is white, everyone is a farmer, and everyone just lives in old traditional houses, white houses, and sells the crops that they have grown in the local market. Vermont is like you take a time capsule back like 150 years. If you're on the border with New York and Vermont, the difference is that in upstate New York there will be farmers with Trump signs, and then on the Vermont side you'll have farmers with Bernie Sanders signs. So it's like in some ways Vermont is like the paradise for anyone who's like super trad and conservative because it's just a bunch of like farmers who have lived in America for 20 generations, but at the same time it's also like politically super progressive and socialist. So it's weird. It's a place with progressive rednecks. So I'll give it a C because like Vermont is it can be really fun to visit. They have, tasty maple syrup stuff and some good camping, but eventually I get kind of creeped out living like hanging out in Vermont cuz like there's no internet like at all anywhere in Vermont. It's too old fashioned for me, I would say. New Hampshire, the saying about New Hampshire is it's like Massachusetts billionaires who don't want to pay Massachusetts taxes. I'm just not that interested one way or another in New Hampshire, so I'll just give it a C as well. And C is like average for me. Now Maine, if Vermont is weird, Maine is kind of scary because it's like it is so wild there. Like you can drive for like 200 miles and just like there's nothing but mooses, mises. So yeah, I've been to Maine. I climbed Mount Katahdin in Maine. That was fun. But Maine is kind of scary because there's just and by the way, Maine has no good churches. Like none of them. There's like four decent like congregational churches, and that's it. So Maine gets a C tier for me. Now, if we want to talk about good churches, the best place in the entire country for good churches is Pennsylvania. Pennsylvania is the Presbyterian Holy Land. Get this. Pennsylvania is where you'll have PCUSA churches that are really conservative, which is good for the Reconquista movement, and you'll also have like OPC churches that have beautiful buildings. It's like the best of both worlds. Pennsylvania has so many great Presbyterian churches, it absolutely gets S tier for me. Okay, next up, let's talk about Delaware. Why is Delaware even a state? I don't know. I know like Joe Biden spent some time there. What else do I know about Delaware? What are the churches like? I think Delaware's pretty average in terms of churches. I think Delaware's kind of average across the board. Okay, it's late tonight. My mind's going crazy places. For some reason, when I think of Delaware, I imagine like yellow traffic lights. Like traffic lights with like yellow that are painted yellow. I don't know why. I've never been to Delaware. I don't know why that pops up, but one day, just to test my theory, I went on Google Maps in Delaware to see if there were yellow traffic lights, and there were. I don't know why. So I guess in the spirit of yellowness, I'll make Delaware yellow. It's Yellowware. You can tell it's late here. Okay, Maryland. What do I know about Maryland? I think Maryland has some pretty good churches. I don't know. I guess I'll give Maryland a B tier, because why not? Okay, next up we have Ohio. Ohio is the Holy Land as far as I'm concerned. I said Pennsylvania is the Presbyterian Holy Land, but Ohio is like my personal Holy Land. Because Ohio is where I converted to Christianity. I grew up being very opposed to religion. I converted to Christianity at a summer camp in Ohio. It was a Christian-themed music camp because, I'm a musician. I study music in college. I'm a viola player. But there was a music camp. It was a regular music festival. It wasn't like a church camp. It was a music festival. It was a Christian-themed music festival in Ohio. And Ohio is awesome, and it's where I converted to Christianity, so I will always see it as the Holy Land. So Ohio gets S tier. Speaking of states that I have good personal association with, West Virginia. West Virginia is where I met the future Mrs. Zoomer in person, where I met my fiance. So she and I met online on a Zoom Bible study during the pandemic. I lived in New York, she lived in Kansas. And by the way, just because she lives there, I'm giving Kansas an S tier too. I live in New York, she lives in Kansas. But We met online and we decided to meet up in person. And because of the pandemic, West Virginia was like the one state that didn't have lockdown restrictions. So we met in West Virginia. And also, West Virginia has a lot of good churches too. So I'll just add that. Kansas is kind of short on churches, but I appreciate the history of Kansas. New York and Kansas have an old alliance that goes back to the 1860s. So the Kansas was founded basically by abolitionists. During the, like, Kansas sort of had its own civil war prior to the American Civil War, and the abolitionists won. And in my fiance's house, I used to always stay in the basement because, we can't stay in the same room. We're Christians. And in the basement, her house has this huge portrait of John Brown. John Brown was an abolitionist in the pre-Civil War era, and he's so cool. He's got like a Bible in one hand and a rifle in the other, and I know people are going to have problems with John Brown, but I'm a Northern nationalist. Get used to it. The abolitionist movement was based. Very based. It's not wokeness, it's just Northern nationalism. It's just Northern supremacy. It's just bigotry against the South. Okay, how's that? How's that? And yes, there was a lot of preachers, a lot of Congregationalist and Presbyterian preachers who told their congregants to move to Kansas to crusade against slavery. And now Missouri was actually the pro-slavery people. I've been to Kansas more times than most New Yorkers can say they have. And here's a fun fact about Kansas. When you go to Kansas, everything's in black and white because they just haven't upgraded to color yet. That's how, like, old-fashioned Kansas is. There's just no color in the state yet. It's just black and white. But Missouri, they definitely do see color. There's a reason Missouri sounds like misery. To get to Kansas, I always have to fly into, Missouri, into Kansas City. I just have this depressed feeling whenever I am in Missouri. There's a reason it sounds like misery, so it gets D tier. I'm sorry. Okay, Illinois is next. I went to Chicago once. Illinois might get A tier if it weren't for their pizza. Sorry, my camera sucks. If I get a million subscribers, I promise I'll get a better camera. I guess I'll have to deal with it being like this for now. But Illinois would get A tier because I went to Chicago to perform in Chicago Symphony Hall. It's basically like a cleaner version of New York. The only reason they're not getting A tier is because their pizza sucks. So they're getting B tier. And I guess Indiana, let's give Indiana B tier as well. I only really went there when I drove through it. Indiana's got some pretty good churches. Michigan. I'm going to give Michigan A tier because Western Michigan is like the Dutch Reformed paradise. That's where Calvin College is, which is actually... Calvin College is one of the few, like, Christian colleges, academically credible Christian colleges. So I'm sorry, guys. Your Wheatons and Bob Jones don't really count. Michigan's one of those few... Calvin College is one of those few academically advanced Christian colleges that are still somewhat orthodox. So Michigan will get A tier. Now... what do I think about... I generally like the Northeast and the Midwest a lot. What do I think about Kentucky? I'm just going to give Kentucky a C tier. Actually, Kentucky is where the PCUSA headquarters is, in Louisville. And while there are some sections of the PCUSA that are based, like in Pennsylvania, Louisville is not. Louisville is like Mordor for the PCUSA. So Kentucky... I'm sorry to say Kentucky gets F tier just because of the PCUSA headquarters and not much else. Okay, Iowa. Now, I had no problems with Iowa prior to meeting my fiance, but she really hates Iowa just because she had bad memories there. Also, Iowa smells like pig poop, and I've been there, and it does indeed smell like pig poop. Because I've been all around the Midwest traveling with my fiance. So, on her behalf... just because I love her, I'm giving Iowa an F, even though if it weren't for her, I probably wouldn't do that. So, the sacrifices you make. Nebraska, I think, gets B tier. I went to Nebraska. It's kind of just like a more chill version of Kansas. What about Wisconsin? I'll give Wisconsin a B tier as well because they have a lot of really based Lutherans there. The Wisconsin Synod is like a super duper conservative Lutheran synod that actually has a strong presence there. The Wisconsin Synod kind of is the mainline church in Wisconsin, and it's super conservative. So that means they have a lot of pretty churches. And as everyone knows, all I really care about is pretty churches. No. If all I cared about was pretty churches, I wouldn't be doing a Reconquista. And I'll say Minnesota also gets B tier, because why not? Now, the Dakotas, what do I think about the Dakotas? The Dakotas have, like, very high IQ, I once saw on this one chart. So for that, I'll also give them B tier, because I think it's important to be smart. Okay, now we've got the Northeast and the Midwest down. Now let's get to the South. Virginia, let's give Virginia a B tier as well, because why not? Now the Carolinas, I'm going to give the Carolinas B tier, because the Carolinas also have a lot of Presbyterian churches. The ARP is a pretty solid denomination, because it's technically mainline, as, I mean, it was formed by people who seceded from the Church of Scotland. It was formed by people who supported the Marrow Republication theology. So it's not mainline in that sense, but as long as they've been in America, they haven't split from anyone, and as a result, they have a lot of traditional buildings and institutions. So the other problem with the ARP, the Associate Reformed Presbyterian Church, is it only really exists in the Carolinas. It's a very regional denomination, but even so, the Carolinas get B tier for this. Now, what do I think about Florida? Florida also has a lot of solid conservative PCUSA churches, conservative Episcopal churches. So I'm going to give it, let's see, A or B. I'm going to give it B because I don't like the nature there. I much prefer, like, forested area, like Northeast and Upper Midwest. So I'm giving Florida B tier as well. Now, Texas is where I'm at right now for school. Texas does have a lot of really good churches. Dallas might end up being like a hub for the Reconquista. So Texas is the one area in the South that's going to get an A tier from me. Oklahoma is going to get a C tier because there's probably nothing there except dust. No, I've not been there, but that's what I can imagine. Louisiana has voodoo, so because it has voodoo, it's getting D tier, because I don't like voodoo. What about Arkansas? I don't know. Okay, Tennessee, I might give Tennessee B tier, because Tennessee's got one of the best PCA churches in the country, which is Covenant Presbytery Nashville. The reason I respect that place is because it was a PCA church that was built recently, and it's completely beautiful. It was built, like, recently by the PCA, which is pretty impressive, because generally the PCA is stereotyped as not having beautiful churches. And I'm also going to be going to Tennessee soon to meet with some conservative PCUSA people and hopefully try and pitch the Reconquista to them, to meet some conservative PCUSA pastors. So Tennessee will get a B tier. Now, what about the rest of the South? Now, a lot of people think that I should like the South because the South is conservative. Well, two things. It's not really that conservative. As far as Gen Z goes, there are no red states or blue states. Gen Z is woke across the board. We're all screwed, okay? Republicans are just 10 years behind the Democrats. Likewise, red states are just 10 years behind blue states in terms of the country's driving off the cliff. Second, it's like, yeah, the South is a little more conservative than the rest of the country, but it's not for a good reason. It's like the reason the South is conservative is the same reason Somalia is conservative. It's because it's poor and not educated. The leftists targeted the rich, elite, educated areas first to spread their ideologies there first. So, yeah, I'm glad that the South is a little more conservative, but that doesn't make me like it anymore. So the rest of the Deep South is just going to get a C tier from me. So basically, I used to be a leftist, as many of you guys know. I used to be a very progressive leftist. And I, just like most leftists, I was very bigoted against, southern, rural, uneducated people. And then when I became a lot more right-wing, as I am now, I developed all the typical right-wing bigotries. But I still kept some of my left-wing bigotries. I still am an elitist. I still think that you have most cultural influence by being involved in elite institutions. And that's why Reconquista is about not retreating from the mainstream universities and cities and churches, but being involved in them and having a positive impact there. So I basically collect the bigotry infinity stones. I have left-wing bigotries and I have right-wing bigotries. Okay? Now let's go to the West. Now, the West, all the architecture in the West was built recently. So that means I don't like it, because in terms of architecture, new means ugly and old means beautiful. So I'm going to give most of the Midwestern states C tier. Now let's see. Utah gets an F because Mormons. Colorado gets F because of the weed. Nevada gets F because of the prostitutes. Oregon gets F because of the crackheads. And now we get down to California and Washington. Now, I normally I would have given them F, but they actually have a surprising amount of conservative PCUSA churches on the West Coast. Like, literally, First Presbyterian Church San Diego is a conservative PCUSA church. Beautiful, historic PCUSA Presbyterian Church in San Diego, California. It's conservative. I know the former senior pastor there. He's awesome. Same, First Presbyterian Church Hollywood, California, is a conservative PCUSA church. I don't know why. Actually, I do know why. It's the influence of Fuller Seminary, which has done a great job. But still, it's nice. So because of that, California only gets D tier as opposed to F. And what about Washington? Washington also has a lot of solid PCUSA churches, especially First Presbyterian Church Spokane, Washington, because Bruce Gore teaches there. Bruce Gore, he's this older guy. He's been teaching in the PCUSA for like 50 years. He is the best YouTuber for like church history and stuff. If you guys want to learn church history from a Presbyterian Protestant perspective, listen to Bruce Gore. All of his lectures are super great. I had the privilege to interview him last summer. Bruce Gore is awesome. If you want like a solid, based conservative theologian in the PCUSA, listen to Bruce Gore. So Washington also gets D tier because Bruce Gore prevents it from being F. Arizona, New Mexico. I have been to Arizona. I went to the Grand Canyon. Honestly, I wasn't impressed by the Grand Canyon. I went to like Arches National Park in Utah. Arches National Park looks more like the Grand Canyon than the Grand Canyon does. So I'm going to give Arizona and New Mexico both D tier because their architecture sucks. Now let's get down to Alaska and Hawaii. Never been to either of them. Neither of them really have good churches, as far as I'm concerned, but they both have beautiful nature. So they both get C tier. And that's it for this video. Please comment if you disagreed with my opinions, which I'm sure all of you at some point did. If I offended you by saying something about your state that's offensive, then I'd like to say that I'm sorry, but I'm really not. I hope you found this video somewhat edifying, even though it wasn't edifying at all. I just wanted to ramble for 20 minutes. So I hope that my next video will be a little bit more useful. Have a nice day.